Hello everyone, today I'm going to tell you about a robotics company that used 3D printing to produce every one of their products. I know it pretty well because I was a part of it, and they were the first client of Slant 3D. So I've talked about this story a few times before. LittleBots was a STEM education company. What we did was we developed Arduino robotics kits for STEM education classes and folks at home who wanted to build robots. Each one of the kits included a number of 3D printed components, and then of course a custom Arduino board that we had done with a separate company. And then there was custom firmware and programming tutorials that went along with them. The very first robot that we had done was actually designed basically over the weekend. It was the original Little Arm, and the Little Arm was really chintzy because it was a prototype. It was basically a throwaway project that I had done on the weekend. At the time, I was running a company called Slant Concepts, and we were a product design firm, and I brought this in there, and we thought it was kind of cool, so we threw it up on Kickstarter. And the Little Arm actually did really well on Kickstarter for a throwaway cell phone video Kickstarter project, but it created a seed of something. The problem is that it had been designed to be 3D printed. At this time in my career, I was not a fan of production 3D printing. I didn't see the scale in it, I didn't see the value in it, and I was really mad at the quality of what people were putting out. But we now had this 3D printed robot that we had to produce. We did not want to build a print farm ourselves. There was no interest in that because printers at the time were really bad. And quite frankly, if I was in the same position today, I still wouldn't want to do that. But that's an oddly self-serving statement today, but it is what it is. But we didn't want to build a print farm. But there was no other alternative. We had sold all these kits through Kickstarter, so that was the way to have them produced. And we didn't want to redesign it for injection molding, even though that original LittleBot arm was really laid out for injection molding. I mean, it still had that hybridization while the laziness that 3D printing allowed. But we decided to produce it with 3D printers. And that effectively became the very first product that Slant 3D started making. At that time, Slant 3D was a print farm inside of Slant Concepts. And over the next 2 years, we would continue to develop robotics kits for LittleBots. LittleBots went everything from the Little Arm Big to the LittleBot Budget. They were mobile, they were crawling, they were grabbing stuff. And the Little Arm itself went through 3 iterations, which if you're interested in design for 3D printing, those are a really good case study that we should probably go deeper into sometime as far as design to explain why they are as good as they are. But basically, we really started to optimize towards the process of 3D printing, which is what should be done. LittleBots continued on until 2020. And then a thing happened that year some of you guys might have heard of, and it became very difficult to get servos. But at the same time, at this point, Slant 3D had been spun out and I had become CEO of Slant 3D. So I was having to focus over there and I was not able to help out with LittleBots. LittleBots was also a spun out separate company that had come out of Slant Concepts because that's kind of what we did. There were about 2 to 3 team members committed to the LittleBots company who were all earning salaries and doing okay. The company was still growing and it was doing fine. And if you'll check out the LittleBots YouTube channel, it still gets a lot of views and a lot of traffic. But with the supply chain challenges of COVID and the way the directions of the team were going, I wasn't able to be involved anymore because I was with Slant 3D, and the other guys who were involved were also busy with stuff because of the pandemic. But we ended up shutting it down. But at that time, there had been thousands of kits produced and shipped. And 3D printing was a really viable methodology for us because it allowed us to create 10 separate kits over the course of about 1.5 to 2 years, which is a bananas product development cycle. And they were really good. And we were selling them in retail. There were formalized packaged kits. Of course, most of our stuff was online, direct to consumer, but we had a lot of retail presence. And it was a very good business, but there just wasn't anybody to carry it on. And with the pandemic supply chain challenges, you would not believe how difficult it is to get good high performance servos in normal times, let alone during the pandemic. So it was just kind of the right time, but LittleBots could have continued on and continued to scale. We could have put it into Walmart with the scale of production that Slant 3D was able to provide at that time, but it just never kind of came together, and STEM education as a whole was becoming a really saturated market too. But the advantages that 3D printing had allowed really quick product iteration. We learned really quickly, and all of those lessons from LittleBots was able to carry over into Slant 3D today. We use many of those lessons in consulting for folks right now, and you've seen many of the examples of them actually on this YouTube channel, where we explain why those design decisions are made to like eliminate parts or consolidate parts. And 3D printing was just fantastic for that. As an example here, I think the original Little Arm contained 35 to 55 total pieces. And that's really broad because I don't remember, but it had a lot of screws in it, basically. By the time we got to the Little Arm V3, that kit, I believe, had less than 20. And that was all enabled by 3D printing. We basically had each servo, the screw for the horn for the servo and the servo horns themselves, but every other part was built in. I mean, even the gripper itself did not have any kinds of pins and joints. We had built a live hinge so that the gripper was able to move and open and close without needing any sort of screws. And this was fantastic for improving the manufacturability of the part to where a kit could be ordered and then it would be print off in a couple days and the parts would literally just be thrown in the box almost with the chip and the instruction manual and then a link to the website with a QR code, and that was all anybody needed to put together one of the kits. So LittleBots was a very successful product that could have gone a lot further, but the world itself had changed a bunch, so we decided to shut it down. But it is a fantastic case study of how to use 3D printing for mass production of products. Comment down below if you happen to ever have a LittleBot, or if you are interested in other kinds of clients and case studies that we have worked on and why 3D printing enabled them to do something really cool. Or if there's something specific about the LittleBots that you're wondering about, where that company doesn't really exist anymore, so we're happy to talk about almost all the details of it. Have a great day, everybody.